if you are an artist, creator, and you are getting exhausted posting weekly, but you don't want to fall into the pit of not being able to post about your art, I think there's some great ideas that I see all the time that I've done for videos that include your art, but you don't need to be doing art.
Hi there, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Make Art, Don't Starve podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey.
And I'm your other host, Al, and today we're going to be talking about why a lot of artists fail on YouTube and the artist to creator content pipeline, which is something that I've noticed a lot and I think is super, super interesting. Specifically, artists failing on YouTube is another thing that I've definitely noticed, and I'm sure you have too, Kelsey. It's a very saturated market. You know, there's a lot of artists on YouTube who want to make it work. YouTube is a great tool for artists. It's a great way to market yourself, and it's a great way to build an audience. The way I've always kind of pictured it is, you know how artists in like the medieval times, like castle owners would like have an artist and it was like their pet artist?
Yeah, artists
that's
would have
how
patrons.
I've always kind of
like,
pictured it.
Patronize.
Exactly. That's how I've pictured it, is like you guys are like hosting me as an artist and I just do art for you guys. So that's great. Like YouTube is a great platform to get a lot of attention, but it can be hard. It can be hard to navigate, and especially for a lot of creative minds who, a lot of us aren't great with numbers or don't think about money that often. It can be really, really hard to figure out how to make this work for us in a financial way and in a realistic way to grow those numbers.
Yeah, for sure. YouTube can be an incredibly powerful marketing tool for artists. I mean, like, it quite literally has changed my life. I had zero social media following before I launched my channel, and 2 years later, I have income streams that are making me thousands of dollars every single month, and I'm working with like Fortune 500 companies, and I'm getting comments all the time from people talking about how I've changed their lives and like made an art career seem possible for them where it didn't before, and all of that sort of is because of my content. But there's interest in my art, and I'm able to do more art than I have been before, and I have more support and more financial backing for my art than I ever did before, and my content is like really positively benefiting my art. And so like I would kind of consider myself, at least on YouTube, more of like a content creator rather than like an artist on YouTube per se. I mean, like, my content is about art, but a lot of my content is about like meta art stuff, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. And I think there are tons of ways that you can succeed as an artist, and there is nothing wrong with making content on YouTube and then using that to support your creative practice and to like give you that kind of day job. Like, you don't have to sell your art to become an artist. It can be really whatever kind of career you want it to be. But that being said, a lot of artists do start channels to try and get more attention for their art, and then they fall into that trap of creating content that is meant for artists, or like for like a lifestyle, like a lifestyle kind of audience, and then they kind of like drift away from that original mission. So when we talk about sort of failing on art YouTube, it's either like their channel's no longer active, or they're no longer creating art related content, even meta art related content.
Yeah, and to be clear, there's nothing wrong with whatever direction you want to go with or you end up going with. I'm much more geared towards doing art. I have a lot of speed paints, and Kelsey does, like she said, meta art content, and neither of those things are bad. We're both artists. I don't think either of us consider ourselves not artists. I think we both consider ourselves content creators, and no matter which way you lean towards, all are fine. We've both noticed this trend of people starting out with the intention of being an artist and putting out their art content, and slowly that goes away. And we're very interested in like why that happens. Like, why is it so hard to maintain posting your art and making your content around specifically your art, not talking about art, because a lot of people start with that intention and then slowly peter off from that, which I think is super fascinating.
Yeah, and this is mostly also sort of geared toward giving you guys some advice for those of you who might want to start your own channel or interested in YouTube as a marketing tool for your creative practice and your art career, because it, again, is an incredibly powerful tool and it has sort of changed both of our lives, but there are some pitfalls that you can fall into and things to avoid and make sure that you are aware of when you're going into it, when you're trying to grow, so that you can really get the most out of it. And we have this experience. We've been through the same thing. We're like, 10 steps ahead of you. So we want to make sure that you don't like fall into our same mistakes, and you can avoid the lessons that other creators have had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, or even just using those kind of traps that you fell into as tools rather than traps, because they're like we said, like they're not bad things, but they, with a YouTube algorithm, with any sort of algorithm, you start doing one thing and you end up doing that thing for the rest of your life. So being aware of those things ahead of time and being able to use them to your advantage rather than accidentally getting sucked into a path that you didn't want to go down, we think would be super helpful to share. So that's what we want to talk about. I want to start off with the first thing being the demanding output of content as an artist specifically.
Oh, absolutely.
We've talked about this before, how exhausting it is. Like for me specifically, I try to put out a real piece of artwork once a week, which is exhausting. It is so much work. There's so much that goes into it, and it is hard to put up with. It's harder to keep up with. To do a full piece, like it takes hours just to do the art, not to mention all the prep and then all the filming adds this whole
having
extra
an idea
element
every
to
week.
it.
I mean, that it's
having
a lot.
an idea every. Oh my god, it's so hard. That having the idea just once a week is literally a job on its own, and it can get really tiring. And so that's, I think, a huge reason. I hear a lot of bigger art or crafty channels talk about, you know, maybe they get comments saying like, why don't you do art more often? And a lot of times they'll say like, I don't have time. I don't have the energy. It's hard. It takes hours and hours and hours, especially if it's people who do these big pieces. That can take sometimes months, and you can't pump those out every week. I sometimes will have to take a break and do something that isn't a piece of art and on a week every once in a while, because it's hard to sustain. And it can be a very, very demanding and taxing job.
And in some respects, the more that you succeed, the less time you have for those really demanding, interesting projects. And as an artist, like, I'm really focused on developing my skill set, on trying to become the best artist I can possibly be. A lot of that work is failing over and over again, like doing things that I am uncomfortable with, trying to put in those hours that are like really hard and draining. Like, I don't like drawing practice in the slightest. I hate studying the fundamentals, but it is so important. And some of those projects that take a really long time, that require a lot of creative energy, are kind of not compatible with the lifestyle of a content creator where you're posting once a week, which can actually be resolved. I think short form content is a whole different ballgame that requires a lot more attention, like posting on Instagram and TikTok just regularly if you're trying to grow actively on those platforms, which in my opinion, growing on Instagram right now is like nigh impossible, and TikTok is really the place where you should be paying attention to. But that is where I think YouTube actually is a little bit more promising of a platform, because while everyone talks a lot about the importance of consistency, and I do think that consistency is important to like build up that that toolkit, I guess, and like put in the hours so that you have that experience to make good videos and to like actually improve your strategy. Once you have a handle on that, I think you can scale back the output a little bit to increase the quality. And I think whenever I take a break, so I'm actually on a break this week because I want to like actually paint, which I haven't done in a long time because of this problems that we're talking about. And my audience was so supportive of that. They were like, take all the time you need, Kelsey, you provide so much value for us. And the value of my content, like I do a lot of business content, I do a lot of entrepreneurship stuff, and that kind of need for me to continue with that trend, to continue growing, to continue providing value is also a part of it, I think, of why it feels so stressful to take a break. No one can give me permission to take a break, so I had to make that decision for myself, which can be difficult. But I do think that like long form video content does have a more interesting and healthy distribution model potential, like posting more irregularly than like short form content. That is a big reason why a lot of art YouTubers fail, because they get so caught up in posting every single week that they stop making art, and then it stops becoming fulfilling for them, so they quit.
Or even if they're not necessarily quitting, it's maybe instead this week I'll just unbox something, or I'll do like a little vlog, and then before you know it, that's kind of all their content is, because that's working well and it's still kind of art related, so they're still an artist on YouTube, but they're not doing art, which again isn't a bad thing. You don't have to share your art to be an artist.
But it does diminish your credibility, I think, in this space.
It does.
Like, if you're not posting art, I think I don't consider you an art YouTuber.
I agree. It's definitely blurred area, right? Because like I would never tell someone like, hey, like you're not an artist just because I don't get to see your art. But there is still that feeling like when you consider yourself an audience member, like I wouldn't expect all of my audience to stick around if I was like, hey guys, I'm just not going to show you my art anymore. Like the thing that you follow me for, I'm not going to give it to you anymore, but still follow me. I wouldn't expect them to stick around and have that same level of excitement about me and about my art because they don't get to see it. I think it does kind of diminish like your credibility and how much I would trust your opinion. If I don't get to see your art and your skill and how good you are and, you know, what kind of art you do, and I don't get to see that, then I don't know if I trust your opinion on, you know, art supplies. What should I buy? What shouldn't I buy? Or art hacks, because like maybe it works for you, but maybe that's because you're doing like splatter paint that I don't do that. So I totally agree. I think I wouldn't ever want to pressure someone into showing art if you don't want to. But especially if you start out that way and that's kind of how you build your audience and saying like, hey, like I do art, here's my art. And then one day you're like, never mind, but I'm still an artist though. Yeah. Follow me for art. I totally understand why people, because I think that too. I don't really see them as an artist YouTuber anymore. And I think it's interesting that they still take up that space and get that label, but don't always contribute the same things. Yeah. Which I don't want to say is a bad thing. Like, that's not my place. But it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there is definitely a balance, right? Like,
yeah,
never posting your art but still claiming to be an artist is not going to build you the best reputation in the space. But you don't have to make every single video a video where you show actively all of your art in order to establish credibility. Like, you don't have to do it constantly. But, like, I don't think that people would trust my opinions if I didn't at least have like some time-lapse videos or studio vlogs or like show my painting process occasionally. And like I do get comments from people showing that, like, and telling me that they're interested in that kind of content, even though all of my videos about that don't perform as well as my videos that are about business, money-making, entrepreneurship for artists. But I think that those types of videos, even if they don't perform well, videos where I do show my art and my like studio vlogs and my process are still important, like for me to make, and also for my audience to just like see that they exist.
Yeah, that you are an artist that they can believe in and trust your opinion in and like value your art. I think it's super important. If you are an artist, creator, and you are getting exhausted posting weekly, but you don't want to fall into the pit of not being able to post about your art, I think there's some great ideas that I see all the time that I've done for videos that include your art, but you don't need to be doing art. Talking about art you've done in the past month, just walking through art you've done, looking through your I just did a video about my old AP art portfolio. That was super fun. We've both done videos where we talk about our art collection, our book
or your favorite artists. I have an older series on my channel where I showed my favorite artists that like fit into certain categories, and you can analyze them, talk about what you like. It can be a really useful opportunity both for yourself to actually analyze those pieces and those artists, like just for your own knowledge, and then also to introduce your audience to people they might be really interested in and people that like they might really enjoy. And like art book collections again are a great like sort of video idea related to this. So there's a lot you can do. I think like just kind of allow yourself to be creative with it. And I think honestly there are an infinite number of video ideas out there for artists. Like there is so much potential there.
Yeah. The way I always think of it is like, how can I let my audience get to know me better as an artist? And like there's so many like showing your art space, all sorts of things that can be about you as an artist but don't require you to make art or to give up that artist label. So keep that in mind. You don't have to, you know, do something entirely different just because you're tired of doing art that week.
Right. But pivoting back to the overall topic of why certain art YouTubers fail when they're starting out. So we do have that demanding output of content, that constant pressure to provide value or to keep doing what's working and not do what's fulfilling for you, which is an important balance to walk on. Like it's a tightrope, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and you have to walk it really carefully. And that is something that you kind of learn from experience. I mean, there's no way to cheat that skill set. It's kind of a thing that you do as you go. So there's really no replacement for just trying. But I think also a lot of beginning art YouTubers fall into this trap of thinking they need to have good art in order to succeed. I think actually there are a lot of channels that provide more entertainment that's art related than good art. I think, you can have terrible art, like, in that you are not succeeding at the fundamentals well. Yeah, you are like low skilled.
Yeah.
And have a very successful channel, and the opposite can also be true. You can have the best skill set in the world and still not succeed on YouTube, and that's because YouTube is a very specific platform, and you have to understand how to be entertaining, how to be engaging, how to provide value, and the underpinning strategy of succeeding on the platform.
Yeah. I definitely struggle with, because both take energy. Making a good, entertaining video and making a good piece of art both take energy. I struggle with that all the time. When I sit down and I'm like, okay, so I can either make a good piece of art, I can do a good painting today, or I can worry about getting interesting camera angles and talking to the camera and being dynamic and, checking on the lighting and doing all the stuff and worry about the editing. I feel like a lot of my videos are super boring. It's just kind of a speed paint, but I like the art, and so I think it still holds value. And then there's a lot of videos where I worry more about the entertainment value, and I'm not really worried about the art, and therefore those hold value. I've seen a lot of artists on YouTube who their art is pretty low skill, but maybe they do vlogs, or they have a beautiful art space.
Or a really entertaining personality.
The videos. Yeah, and they make the videos so entertaining, and they're really good at editing, and it's just a fun time to like hang out with this person, and we both do art together. There's so many ways that you don't have to be like the most skilled artist to make a good YouTube video or to make a good YouTube channel about your art. And I think that's really awesome to see like people of all skill levels and all backgrounds doing art and still succeeding. I will say I think that there's value, especially in other platforms besides YouTube. I do think it's important to be confident in your skill, even if you are not the most highly skilled. I think it's important to have confidence in your skill and consider your skill level and kind of the niche of your art. I've gotten a lot of questions like, why won't my channel grow? And it's like, well, you make a very, very niche kind of art. Maybe you make furry art, you know what I mean? And there's not a lot of people who maybe want to see that.
But you're probably rolling in the dough from commissions, let's be honest.
That's so true. But I definitely think there's a balance of kind of having that knowledge and that ability to make people interested in you or your art or both.
Self-reflection is really important in understanding the market,
yeah,
like the community that you want to enter into. Like, try to do a little bit of market research when you're first starting out. Like, see, are there channels in this space that are really successful? What do their subscriber counts look like? If there is like a max number, like you don't see any channels above 100K, maybe think about broadening a little bit. I mean, you can obviously have a very successful career without having 100,000 followers, but like you might be limited in certain respects. And so I do think it is somewhat important to be able to appeal to a wider audience, especially when you are just starting out. Niching is great, but as you develop more authority in one niche, you might reach like the cap of people interested in that thing.
Yeah. And I think, so I think that's definitely something that, like, be honest with yourself, kind of think about that aspect of if you really want to, if you want to do that niche, awesome. I'm not going to get mad at you. But if you are looking for a very successful, like, wide-reaching, not millions of subscribers, but if you're looking to really be part of that artist space, niching yourself can niche yourself, and you might not be able to reach the wide potential of an audience, and then it's hard to change.
Exactly.
Yourself.
I was posting like non-toxic oil painting content for the first 6 months of my channel, and I got so exhausted by that. I was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I feel like I've run through all of the possible video ideas, so I broadened up. And I think starting with a very niche audience and then broadening over time, where like your broader audience that you are trying to now appeal to does still contain your previous niche down audience, is honestly the way to go. And back to sort of the discussion of low skilled versus high skilled when you're just starting out, I think there is an enormous amount of value in starting out when you are low skilled and making a point to share the journey of developing your skill set, because that's what a lot of artists and people that watch our YouTube really want to see. Like, they want to see you struggle because that struggle is a reflection of their experience. Like, you are speaking directly to them. a lot of art YouTubers are very aesthetic, their skills are very advanced, and that can be really intimidating when you're just starting out. You might think that you might not have what it takes to be an artist watching that content, but the opposite is true. They just practiced longer. They had different resources, different advantages that you might not have, and showing your process of getting from point A to point B is so valuable, and that's kind of like the undercurrent like of my entire channel personally. And I think that I get a lot of comments talking about how valuable that is. And even when I do like fail at a certain challenge, they're like, this was the best video I've seen on that challenge because it was actually like accurate, and this is the kind of thing that I was looking for. So yeah, I would say that like I would not be afraid of starting out regardless of what skill level you're at. Don't feel intimidated by that. But I do think that there is a little bit of a hesitance in the art community from calling yourself a content creator or a YouTuber. And I think resisting that label can hold you back even more so than like the worrying about your skill level thing. Because I think not taking the content creator side seriously can just nuke the potential of your channel if you're not interested in improving like your cameras and your editing and your lighting setup.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, this is just one path that you can go down. Being an artist online is just one branch of being an artist, and it's one career path. You don't have to do these things, but if you do, like, I think there's a lot of wasted potential when you don't, if you're going to do it, but you don't do it, like, with your full heart, you know what I mean?
All in.
I think there's
like
a lot
all
of...
in.
You gotta go all in. And that doesn't mean you have to spend every ounce of energy on this, but I think it's a shame when you see creators who are kind of afraid to call themselves a YouTuber when a lot of their platform is on YouTube, and it's like, well, you probably wouldn't be an artist, a super successful artist. This wouldn't be your career
if your entire marketing is because of YouTube, if your entire success as an artist is because of your audience on YouTube, you're a YouTuber, honey. It's okay. You can say
you're a YouTuber. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously by now it's a pretty accepted career choice, but even beyond that, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, it's a very public way to share your art, which is what a lot of artists' goal is. That's my goal, is I want people to see my art and I want to share it with as many people as possible. And YouTube is a really easy and great way to do that. And there's nothing, I don't feel embarrassed by saying like, I'm a YouTuber and I am a content creator. I think that's the easiest way to do it because it's not always just about art, it's about other things too. And I think I understand people's hesitancy to say it. I can sometimes feel a little bit undermining of maybe if you are take your art very seriously, but I would really encourage people to embrace that side of it and like have fun with it. It's like Kelsey always says, it's like another art form.
Yeah.
And embrace that, enjoy it, and use it to your advantage. If not, then kind of why bother? If you're going to post a video like every once in a while and kind of only put half your energy into it, like what's the point? If you're going to do it. You're doing it for a specific reason. You may as well try hard.
And if you want this to be your job, you do have to treat YouTube like a job. Like, if you want YouTube to be a very serious source of your marketing, if you want it to be like the top of your marketing funnel and where you get most of your audience, your customers, or if you want it to be a really viable income stream for your business, you do have to take it very seriously. That means diving into the strategy, figuring out how to make good content. How are you going to script your videos? How are you going to edit creatively? How are you going to stand out from the crowd? Like, what differentiates you from all of the other content creators out there? That's called a comparative advantage. It can be literally like anything. It can be anything. It can be the kind of art that you make. It can be your personality. Like, could you imagine if there was an Emma Chamberlain of YouTube? Could you imagine that?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That would be crazy. That would be so cool.
Crazy.
Like, think about what stands out to you about all of the other YouTubers out there. What makes them unique? I guarantee, even if you are like the most boring person alive, there is something you can do, or there is some aspect of yourself, your experience, your perspective, maybe all of the previous jobs that you had before this, that can and will set you apart if you lean into it. So the comparative advantage of like my channel, at least, is that I'm willing to share a lot of information, like the numbers, like how much money I make, like the exact, like down to the penny amount. And that is kind of rare within the community. And I might
For
not
sure.
be able to do that more so as I grow, like as I sign different contracts with sponsors and stuff. But at least like right now, it is an edge that I have over like the competition per se. But I think like I don't consider art YouTubers competition. They're just like
Yeah.
coworkers. Like they're the only people out there that understand what it's like to be in this position.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it could be anything. When you said that, I was thinking like one thing that I love about Lee's videos, her studio vlogs, is she really leans into like the aesthetics of the footage. Not even necessarily making an entertaining or productive vlog, but like there's a lot of just beautiful shots with this sepia kind of filter, and like literally something as simple as just making your videos pretty to look at is enough. Like there's so many things that it doesn't even have to be like a lot of artists. I'll watch vlogs of very small artists who are maybe in high school and kind of just enjoy doing art. They don't have a career yet. They're not in contact with businesses. They're not really doing anything to add value to kind of the business or the art career side. But they can still have a great vlog because they kind of make it cinematic and they have their own angle. Even if you have literally nothing on the kind of professional side to add, there's still plenty that you can do to make yourself stand out and be worth subscribing. Because like you said, I don't really think it's necessarily competition. There's no limit to the amount of people you can subscribe to, but making yourself stand out and making it worth subscribing to you. And like you said, you have the value of talking about things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. That's something like that's a really great value. I think it's really easy if you watch a lot of art YouTubers to kind of see different gaps. The reason that I wanted to start my channel was because I found that there wasn't a lot of full art videos, and that's what I really wanted to do. Was I wanted to just really show like the full art process of what I hope would be kind of high skill level art. I kind of provide that edge of there's a lot of meta art content, and I don't see a lot of entertaining straight art content, and so I think that's what I provide. And there's so many different things that you can provide.
But also your Make a Gay series too is a really unique idea, like reinterpreting heterosexual, heteronormative works of famous art into a different context, like changing the genders, the sexual orientation, like the presentation. That is so cool, and that is like definitely an area where you stand out. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm very passionate about, is adding a lot of LGBTQ queer representation in art. I didn't even think about that being an edge, but that's true, because there's also not a lot of like really outwardly queer creators. So if that's something you have going for you, we always need more representation.
Exactly.
Consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like understanding that underpinning of strategy, that sort of comparative advantage, is really important for success. You don't need it per se. There are people that don't consider strategy, but it's getting a little bit saturated here on YouTube. I do think, though, however, that there will always be a need for really high quality content, but being willing to lean into the content creator side of things and really put a lot of consideration into the strategy behind your videos, the idea, the editing style, will really help. And creators that don't do this will probably have a far likelier chance of failing than creators who do take that really heavily into consideration. I am a firm believer in that, like, there is literally always something that I can improve about my videos or my art skills or my marketing strategy, and I try to be as brutal as possible for myself, like, just to really say, okay, like, I know for a fact there is something that I could be doing better. What is that thing? And always being on the hunt for that, especially when it comes to a marketing platform like YouTube, where it's legit very important to pay attention to if you really want to seriously succeed. I think being willing to do that will really help, and creators that don't might not have the same success as creators who do. So putting that effort into the quality of your videos, thinking about the numbers, really makes a difference.
I will say that it is a slippery slope. Putting a lot of energy into the content side of it leads into what we were talking about, this artist to content creator pipeline. It's really hard to find that balance, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to, if you want to shift your content, if you're not into art anymore, that's totally fine. You don't have to stick to the same thing for the rest of your life. But it's a very interesting phenomenon that we've both observed with a lot of different creators, big and small, It's this very interesting kind of pattern that happens, whether it's because this artist kind of failed, quote unquote failed, as an artist online, or if it's because maybe they're not interested in that anymore, if it was maybe a phase, if they just didn't have the time or the energy. It's a very interesting thing that tends to happen online.
Yeah, and sometimes,
specifically on YouTube,
sometimes the videos that you make that are not art related succeed more, like in my case. And if you are focusing on the numbers, if you are trying to make the best YouTube channel you can possibly make, sometimes you're going to hyper focus on what's working. You're going to make more of that. And then eventually your content is not about art anymore. And that is sort of what can contribute to this artist to content creator pipeline, where you figure out, okay, the content that I make about art entrepreneurship or art business, or like tutorials or unboxings or reviews, or like maybe my lifestyle vlogs just perform better, I'm going to make more of those because I want this to be my job. Like, I want to succeed. I want to keep making money. I want to keep getting those brand sponsorships. I want my channel to keep growing. And so you feed the algorithm, you make more of that stuff, and 6 months later you might have a completely different channel than what you started out with. And so I think you have to always be a little bit vigilant of like, okay, like, where am I actually spending my time? What is my goal with YouTube, with my art career? Do I want to spend more time making art? Am I not making the right videos that are conducive to me being able to do that right now? Should I switch up my strategy? Because you can easily pinhole yourself into a place that you don't want to be, but it's not like that is fated or like the only option for you. You can switch into a new niche. You can roll back and return to art-related content. So while it is, of course, totally valid to switch to more meta art-related content, and I think by meta art-related content, we're talking about like content that is very firmly about art, but also not art. So, like, examples of meta art content would be product reviews, maybe art supplies hauls, art book collection, reviews or tutorials or whatever.
Organization videos. I would argue vlogs are part of that, kind of that idea of selling the idea of being an artist, kind of that illusion of we're being creative and we're an artist, but you might not ever actually see that person do art, but you have no doubt that like this is an art related video.
Artist entrepreneurship content is like this, like business advice, income reports, like how to grow on Instagram as an artist. Like those kind of videos fall into the meta art related content category. But at least in my experience, those videos tend to by and large perform far better than my art related videos. And, you know, as we've been talking about, it can be really tempting to really lean into that, but you can resist it. You can not do that if you want to, or you can do it. I mean, it's up to you, obviously, but it's just like a thing that you should be aware of.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, like, I wouldn't consider you like a failed artist just because your videos, every video is not you doing art.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm early enough in my career right now that I think that that's okay. And also, I don't mind that. Like, I don't, like, even if that's where I ended up, I wouldn't consider it a failure because I would still have built a career that would be conducive to my creative practice, even if I'm no longer showing my art in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's great about meta art content is it is such a great tool. It's building your ability to be an artist. It's giving you that, it's giving you the freedom to spend more time on your art, and you're still making content about your art, and but you don't have to crank out a piece every week. And I think those are those great handy videos that you can use to supplement. You know, if you do want to, like, I like to focus on my art, the art itself. And when I get tired, I can make one of those meta art videos that do perform well, and they don't damage the channel, and they stay on theme without me having to expend that energy. So it can be a great tool. It can also be a slippery slope where you end up making those videos a lot, or it can, like, you are great at those videos. You find out, like, that this is maybe what I'm better at.
That might be my comparative advantage, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think meta art content is really interesting. And like I said, I consider vlogs to be meta art content because even when there's art in vlogs, it's very rarely kind of about the art. So I think a lot of like big YouTubers like Radia, Free Little Peach, Lee, they do a lot of vlogs, and a lot of times there's not that much art in their videos, in their content, and I would not doubt that those people are artists. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality of being a working artist as well is that a lot of times, like, your time is just taken up by stuff that is not painting, like marketing, admin tasks, shipping orders, like manufacturing merch, like all of that stuff just takes a lot of your time. And I think it is like important to portray the lifestyle and the expectations accurately, so that people don't go into it and be like, wait, but I thought it was going to be this magical experience where I could lock myself in my room all day and just do painting. And like, honey, no, that's not how it works. I'm so sorry.
No.
And I think meta art content can be really useful for when you are feeling art blocked, when you are just like so busy with stuff that you can't do an art piece, and for when you want to take the time to really dive in to a long-term project. Like maybe you wanted to paint every single day for a month, but that's like the video idea for the end of the month, but you still have 3 other weeks that you have to have a video for. So maybe you batch film 3 meta art related videos and you post those throughout the month, and then you actually have time to paint every single day instead of worrying about like, okay, like what am I going to film this week? I have to edit this video this week, and then you can just dive in solely to that project and just pay it all of your attention. So like there is definitely room for meta art related content, and it can be a very useful tool, but if you don't want to make that exclusively, you do have to treat it with just a little bit of caution.
Yeah, because it's so easy to make. Not easy to make, like there's no work that goes into it, but comparatively it is such an easier process. You can batch film, you can sit down and knock out a bunch of videos in one day, at least the filming portion of it. And you can't really do that with like specifically what I do is doing a piece of art every day. I don't have the energy to sit down and smash out a bunch of pieces of art. That would be awful.
I could not imagine wanting to do that. Oh man.
I would cry. I would cry.
That's like Inktober so you every day.
Oh my god, yeah, it's not a good idea. Don't do it. And it would be really, really exhausting. You can't just sit down, even if you wanted to do a video every day and like, you know, film an art piece every day, that would still be exhausting. And so the appeal of meta art content, of being able to kind of do a high value, good, entertaining video in one sit down session is really, really appealing. And it can be a great tool. Can be really, really good for when you just don't have the energy for things, and kind of to give yourself time to work on art. And it can also, like we said, be that slippery slope. But I think it's something to just be aware of, kind of when you're working out, well, what kind of channel do I want to be? And you can explore, you can change your mind. But when you're working out, like we've talked a lot about how you have to be careful because of the algorithm can force you into one niche, and before you know it, you're doing one thing. And so it can be good to think about, do I want to be making this kind of content, or do I want to focus on art? And if you want to focus on art, you have to be careful with this meta content, because when you post all this meta content and then you post art videos, no one wants to watch the art video.
That is what I'm learning.
And it's not
that's
so much
my
the
experience,
reverse.
At least. Yeah.
Right.
So if I'd want to pivot, I would have to sort of retrain my audience to expect more art stuff.
Right. Which can be really, really difficult and could lead to like a major dip in your analytics or your ad revenue, and that can be really tough. So just being aware of those things and like thinking ahead of time, like how can I use these meta art videos to my advantage rather than falling victim to them. And they're also great. Like I have a lot of like meta video ideas that I use as like backup for when I don't have an emergency, you know what I mean? And I like, okay, I know I'm not gonna be able to do any art this week. I'll just use one of these videos instead. So having those as a tool, or deciding that that's the kind of content you want to make. You're not ready to commit to the time constraints of doing art every week type of thing.
And there are definitely some creators that used to make really high quality art, or like started out as artists and are now making exclusively meta art related content that like you can tell their heart isn't 100% into it, and that really shows. So it's just important to be vigilant of that. I would love to know your thoughts about this. Be sure to let us know in the comments. Before we close out the episode, we would like to give some advice to a viewer that wrote us an email. It's a little bit of like a topic shift from the rest of the episode. So consider this
related to a previous episode.
The end, but it is more related to our previous episode. If you would like us to give you advice, feel free to email us or ask us questions. We are still doing the comment highlight this is like the email highlight, I guess, section of this episode. So yeah, but yeah, what was the thing that they wanted us to give advice about?
Yeah, I will try to kind of summarize. It's a pretty decent sized email, so I'll try to summarize. Basically, they are a small Twitch streamer, and related to our parasocial relationship episode, they found that very interesting and kind of touched on a topic that they were experiencing currently or at the time, and basically crossing of boundaries, where they are a very small Twitch streamer. I think they said about 10 regular viewers, and one specific member who is incredibly supportive of them comes to every stream. They played in a group setting. They were becoming kind of crossing that boundary more towards friends when this person really, really made them uncomfortable and kind of said some very harmful generalizations in their Discord server, and it was just a very uncomfortable situation. They dealt with it. They spoke to that person and they apologized, but they found themselves not wanting to go live because they knew that this supporter would show up, and they felt super uncomfortable, which you should never feel uncomfortable in your own creative space.
You can set the rules for your community and the expectations, and you should absolutely feel free to enforce that. Your boundaries are yours.
Yeah. Absolutely. So they really didn't know, they didn't want to continue to cancel their streams, and they didn't really know how to deal with it, especially because they had such a small audience that they were worried about kind of making a wrong move and affecting their entire community in a negative way, because they were all kind of friends. And so they want to know if we've experienced something like this, and if we know how to kind of move that relationship back towards just an audience member rather than kind of that growing friendship, which I thought it's a very sticky situation.
It is really tricky. Yeah. Difficult. I don't know if there's really a right thing to do here or like a clear answer. Yeah. I think it's hard.
It is. They said that they spoke to that person, the person apologized, but it still happened and it still hurt people. I think it's important when, specifically something like this, where they've said something harmful about a group of people. We don't know exactly what they said.
The email was pretty vague, but I think we probably can get the gist.
Yeah. I kind of get an idea of what might have occurred. And that could hurt a lot of people, not just you, but also in the rest of your audience. I know when someone says something homophobic, I delete those comments because I don't want anyone else to see that in my comment section and think that I might support that, or I don't want to hurt other people by making them see that. And so I think remembering that while you're not responsible for everyone and everything that happens in your audience, if you're going to cultivate that audience, you need to hold some sort of responsibility for keeping a safe environment. And I think, they dealt with it the best that they could without making everyone uncomfortable. But I would never be afraid to block someone or tell them, like, hey, this is unacceptable. Yeah. Even if you think you're going to do better, they've still possibly hurt people.
And in this case,
and made other people uncomfortable.
This was a member of their community that was, like, very active. It wasn't a stranger. Like, when people, like, email or DM or comment, like, bizarre things and, like, they've never done that before, I don't remember their face. It doesn't ring any bells, like, their profile picture or their profile name. I will, like, insta-block, hide, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I do remember people that comment in my videos, like, regulars especially. I can, like, absolutely list off, like, 15 names right now of people that I remember in my comment section.
Yeah.
And if one of those people just, like, changed or, like, commented something really hurtful, that would be a weird and tricky situation. Because I do feel like I kind of know that person, like, a little bit. Like, not, like, as a friend or even like in the same way that you would know someone that you don't even only met once in real life, but like you do have some awareness of who that person is and what they're about. And I think like it's a hard situation, but at the end of the day you do have to enforce and set rules for your community, and you should never, absolutely never feel like your community is pushing you out, or that you are afraid of doing something, or afraid of like holding somebody accountable for something, because that's your space. Like, they are coming into your home and saying that to you. You should feel free to kick them out, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And it can especially be difficult when it's someone who, for lack of a better word, you rely on for support. I have had a similar experience where it was someone that gave me actually a lot of monetary support. Ooh. I won't go into further details, But things got super uncomfortable, and it was really, for a long time, I just put off saying anything because I kept thinking, this is money. Like, but no matter what they are offering, even if it might be uncomfortable in your entire community, your safety and your mental health, like, there were things that I was afraid to post because I knew this person would see. You should never have to feel that way. It's not only is it like your career or your hobby or whatever, it's like you said, it's your home, this space that you've made for yourself, and you should never feel like you have to give that up for someone, and it can be super uncomfortable. It's so much easier said than done. It's so much easier said than done, but it is so worth it to take the steps to make it clear to that person that there are boundaries, and if it's worth it, just telling them that they are not welcome because of their actions. And even if you have a very small audience, it can feel really scary to kind of, if you have 10 audience members, it can feel really substantial to get rid of just one of them, but it will still be worth it. It will still be worth it just to have that mental clarity again, because it can really, really weigh on you. And it feels silly to be like, well, they've only done one thing, or maybe it's not that big of a deal. Why would I give up? I'm working so hard, and why would I give that up? It's difficult, but like in the long run, it will
dealing
be
with
it.
that will
Especially
take a toll on you. Whether you visibly notice it or not, over time, it will have an impact. And trying to just
it will
make your experience of growing online as a creator as positive as you can be, as positive as it can be, that has an impact. Of course it does. So yeah, I'm sorry that we don't have better advice for the person that emailed us. It is a tricky situation. I think they did the best they could, but we just thought that we would share that with you guys to see if there was anyone out there that had a similar situation, and just to sort of share that same advice with the rest of y'all. So yeah, that is our episode. We will see you very soon with a brand new episode. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.